Okay, Mr. Chairman, we prepared a slideshow PowerPoint for the commission today. I'm going to walk through that. We're going to be presenting, I believe, by committee. So along with Jeremy Revelle or JJ from the department, also Director McCombie is going to be stepping in with a few comments as well. I'm going to kind of walk through this PowerPoint presentation, and then at the end, we kind of wanted to bring up a live demonstration, and that's going to be done with the Bureau Veritas database. We currently have all that data captured and in AIM, and we're getting ready to go live with that. So just be aware, and you'll probably hear this again during the course of the presentation, that all of the reports that you see, and then other reports as well, will be available in AIM, or as it's now called, Operate database. So we'll be able to replicate all those reports, and the school districts will be able to get in and view that information as well.
Okay, thank you.
So the first slide we have is essentially just a very generic graphic in regards to what the FCI score is. And as you can see on the slide, and I'm sure most of you have heard this before, it's the total cost of existing deficiencies divided by the current replacement value. As you're aware, in rule, we've determined that we were going to look 5 years in advance at current and existing deficiencies as well as projected deficiencies in order to try to get in front of that and address the remedies as necessary to move forward. And once again, this is a very general description of where we're at. As you're aware, you know, our threshold for flagging for a MRSA is at a 0.30. On this slide, you'll see some terms that are going to be coming up in today's discussion and in the preview of the database. Expected useful life is the industry standard for those types of components or materials. The effective age is the opinion on the age of the equipment that's being assessed. In some cases, that in-service date is known, and sometimes there's plates that show when that equipment was manufactured attached to those. In other cases, there isn't. And so the effective age is essentially the assessor's opinion on how old that equipment may be based on its appearance and its condition. Remaining useful life is the opinion on the number of years until that particular component or material or system needs to be replaced. The deferred or current deficiencies are the immediate or short-term repairs that have been identified in the assessment. Projected deficiencies are when the remaining useful life of those components or materials or systems is projected to occur. And then you see the last is the facility condition index, which is the sum of all the deficiencies divided by the building cost replacement value. If I get moving too fast, please feel free to interject and ask questions, because there's quite a bit of information here, and this was intended to be more of a discussion than a presentation. It's for everybody's benefit, and it'll help you kind of understand as we move through this what some of the things mean when we start doing the demonstration out in the database. One of the things that we've done is we've added more detail to the Uniformat 2 codes in our system so that it'll be easier for districts to identify the appropriate code for planned work orders that they're working on. And it also helps us get a little more specific about tracking our assets and understanding exactly what type of work the districts are doing with their major maintenance, so that we have a better understanding of what needs to be done as well. We've added 95 additional codes from previous tracking. And as you can see, we believe those represent a higher level of detail for reporting and tracking purposes. We did have to go through and do a crosswalk so that we can capture all that old historical information as well, to the level of detail that it was done, and we'll make that available as well. Any work orders that were already existing in the system before we make this new adjustment and go live with this data will still be reported for expenditures under the old codes. And then when we do our reporting, we'll be able to convert that into the new codes for this crosswalk. There was a significant amount of effort done by the department to create that crosswalk and to develop the new codes. The new code, as I mentioned earlier, should be more intuitive and user-friendly. And I'm just going to go into a little bit on that. In the previously, aside from the specific security codes, which remain the same and will stay in the system, we had about 66 codes. And we also created a reference guide because some of those descriptions were very general in nature, and there were examples in order to convey the intent of what that code was to be applied to. We believe that with the 95 new codes, that'll be a little easier for districts to identify exactly what the appropriate code should be for the work that they want to do. And when they enter their planned work orders, they have the ability to enter multiple phases within the work order that captures all the different codes for the work that will be done. For example, if they were going to do, say, a remodel on a bathroom, you know, they would have codes for the walls, codes for the plumbing, codes for the flooring, finishes, fixtures, all that type of thing that all would be included in that work order. I would note that, you know, overall, there's probably around 460 or 465 Uniform Act codes recognized as an industry standard. So we tried to find a compromise between getting too deep into the weeds on this, and we felt like this was pretty much a good place to land. This will allow for the facility managers in the districts to track specific building components and systems, and also to use it for planning purposes. Now, I would say the caveat to that is sometimes components last longer than we anticipate. Sometimes they fail sooner than we anticipate. So it is a general guideline. It's not an exact forecast, but it's the best data that we have available at this time. And this should help. This should help simplify the cost estimating and budgeting for the districts as well. As most of you who are familiar with construction know, usually that's the way we tackle things, is we break it down into different divisions and try to approach it a piece at a time in order to build the overall budget. I wanted to briefly touch on some of the differences. I don't want to get too deep into detail here. We're constantly looking for new and better ways and trying to improve our processes. And, it's not really, the intent isn't to necessarily compare the two and try to figure out what was good or bad, but understanding what some of the differences are might help you understand what the benefits of the new system are. So in the 2016 condition assessment, the cost model for deficiencies and cost replacement value were based on RS means data. Depreciation of certain components was calculated into the deferred maintenance. So if we had a component that, say, was halfway through its life cycle, that component and that age was kind of calculated in as the deferred maintenance because they didn't necessarily project into the future when that component was going to fail. I believe that data was available, but it was kind of converted into a static number so that we could get a relative idea of where that component stood within its life expectancy. And then that helped us prioritize a needs list by building. As you can see on the next bullet point, FCI scores were static until the subsequent condition assessment. So that score stayed the same throughout, whatever the term was until the next assessment was completed. And that assessment was for buildings only. It didn't include playgrounds, parking lots, and site-related equipment. In the 2023 condition assessment, it was a requirement that the consultant contact some of the larger general contractors within the state and get multiple data points from them and unit costs in different regions of the state. So they cross-check that using national cost data and their known costs from other assessments that they've done around the United States as well. And they made regional adjustments within the state of Wyoming to account for different pricing based on, the resources that were available in those particular areas. No depreciation was calculated into the deficiencies because now we're projecting those deficiencies as the years come into play. And those deficiencies come online, that FCI score becomes dynamic. So as those deficiencies come online, that FCI score is going to adjust. As remedies are realized, those FCI scores may go down as well. And I would say that we have the ability to, within both databases, to project the deficiencies and adjust for inflation in real time. So we're building that into our reports where you can go in and adjust inflation accordingly, and it'll adjust the projected costs of the deferred maintenance out. And then again, the building cost replacement value was also calculated using current Wyoming construction costs that were adjusted by region. And just to elaborate on that a little further, those cost replacement values are based on the systems that are in existence. So much like the example that I used yesterday with, changing from fluorescent lights to LED lights, the cost is based on, what that building's construction type is, what the veneer on the exterior of the building is, the type of mechanical system that's in that building. So there is the potential that if we were to build a new school, we might build it a little bit differently than the existing building. So, but for the purposes of keeping everything equitable and reasonable, we had to assess those buildings based on what was there, what the condition of those buildings were, and that cost replacement value had to be directly related to the type of building that it was in that particular area.
John, real quick, I did have a question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So on the regions, I'm sure that there's kind of a fuzzy line on those, but could you kind of speak to the different regions that they were looking at as they were doing this, just kind of for the record?
I would have to get the information to show exactly where like the geographical lines might have been for the regions, but I can tell you, like over on the western side of the state, for instance, like in the Jackson Hole area, we've experienced much higher costs per square foot for construction. I believe up north was somewhat higher, and then a lot of the rest of the state, it didn't vary too much. but up around the Sheridan area, we did see some higher costs, and some of the rural areas, there were minor adjustments made for those because of, you know, the accessibility, quite honestly.
Perfect. Thanks, John.
So we're going to talk a little bit about there are multiple reports available in the Bureau Veritas database. We just picked essentially 5 of the main ones, 5 that we've been taking a hard look at for quite some time. And as you see, when we get into the demonstration, these are the reports that we're going to want to bring up. And I believe we've got examples of those reports on the following pages. The first being the FCI analysis report. And essentially what this does is it shows how that FCI score would be adjusted as deficiencies come online. And this is assuming that there is no work being done on those, that deferred maintenance remains. And it also projects out the inflation for those costs going into the future as well. If you look at the top of the page, you'll notice that it talks about the building's particular replacement value, which is essentially the total square foot multiplied by the cost per square foot for that particular area and building type.
Is that adjusted as the building value if you were to do another one moves forward, or is that a static number at this point?
It would be pretty much static. I mean, we would have the ability to adjust that based on inflation if we wanted to. But everything's relative, right? So as we adjust those deficiencies, you know, we're going to be adjusting the value too. So the actual FCI score in that regard might stay very close to what it's projected to be at this point in time, because the same inflation rate would be applied.
Right.
The next one we have is the FCI analysis graph. And on there's a couple of different things. You see the red line, which is a projection of your FCI unabated. The vertical axis on here is your facility condition index percentage. You can see in 2028 for this particular school, which is Vital Elementary School in Albany County School District number 1, is projected to pretty much hit right at that 0.30 threshold. The blue bars that you see are the amount of dollars of deficiencies that come online for that particular year. And then the gray is the deferred costs that are escalated and accounted for with inflation. And again, this assumes that there's no work being done. So as work is being completed on this particular building, you know, those bars will adjust as well. And we plan on, and I'll touch on this a little bit later too. We plan on tying this in with the planned work orders. One thing I would mention is that we recognize, like I mentioned yesterday, that some of those costs are going to exceed what the projected costs are, simply because there may be different components that are used, upgrades that are done. And so as those remedies are realized, what we're going to do is we're going to take the deficiency amount offline, as opposed to the amount of dollars that the district spend for the remedy offline, because we don't want to misrepresent, you know, what's being done. The next report is an assets and observations list, and essentially this just lists out the existing deferred maintenance and the projected deferred maintenance as it comes online by that particular asset. I would mention that I think it's the next report, but I do want to point out that every individual, if you look in that left column, every particular asset has its own asset ID number. So when there are multiple assets of the same type, for instance, if there's 5 different boilers in a building, each one of those boilers is going to have its own asset ID. And I'm going to talk on this a little bit later too. We've got pretty much pictures for every single asset that are in that database. So districts have the ability to go in, take a look at those pictures and verify that the asset that they're submitting the planned work order on is truly indeed the asset that they're working on. And once that work is completed, we're going to reset the life expectancy on that and move that out into the future, which will then adjust that FCI accordingly. The next report is a replacement reserves report. And essentially this lists the assets out, and then it shows the year by the asset of when that life expectancy is anticipated to end. If you notice, just to get into a little bit more detail on this, we've got quantities and linear feet. And I think that that's important to mention because there are some descriptions included in the particular observation report by asset. So not every remedy is necessarily a full-blown replacement. You know, for instance, we might have a metal rail system on the outside of a building that doesn't necessarily need to be replaced, but it needs to be painted and sealed so that, you know, we get the full life expectancy out of it. Or maybe another good example might be if there's some brickwork that has some issues, we might just be recommending a repoint as opposed to a full replacement. So you have to dig into the details a little bit to understand exactly what the dollar value associated with the deficiency represents. And that's not to say that we're depicting to the districts what they need to do in order to remedy a situation. I think we still believe that they know their buildings better than anybody else, and they have a pretty good idea of what they need to do in order to remedy their situations. But for the purposes of identifying deficiencies and cost replacement value in order to establish a condition needs list, this is the direction that we went in. The next graphic is for the system expenditure forecast. What we like about this is this will roll multiple uniform ag codes up into a system and project what the costs on that particular system are going to be into the future. So, for example, with your HVAC, you know, you might have 15 different uniform ag codes that contribute to that system. And those, as those deficiencies come online. So that'll include all of the relevant uniform ag codes underneath that and roll it up to give you an idea of how much you're going to be spending or should anticipate needing to spend on that particular component going into the, or system rather, going into the future. Last but not least, we've got a buildings by year, and that projects all deficiencies for that particular building into the future. As you can see, I believe we went 17 years and out on this particular report, but that was just simply because that's about all we felt we could fit onto the slide. We do have the ability to go out as far as 40 years. Now, the caveat to that being, the further you try to project out into the future, probably the less accurate things are going to be. But that should give districts a pretty good look at where their anticipated expenditures are going to be by building going into the future. Some of the assessment details, just to kind of give you an order of magnitude on what we've been working through for the last year, trying to sort through all this stuff and get it ready to go live, to build the system and aim to do the migration of all the data from the Bureau Veritas database into ours. There's 48,000 individual assets and systems that were assessed as part of the assessment. We've got 50,000 photographs captured and uploaded to that asset in the AIM database. There were 3,840,000 data points captured assessment, which includes unit cost, quantities, anticipated remedies for every deficiency. It also has the markups for regional costs and inflation, both of which we have full control over making adjustments as, and that's, I think, an important point to make. I think we've established a very good baseline for this, but the intent is that we continue the process of improvement as we get better information from the districts. We have the ability to go and make these adjustments within the database in live time. We can adjust for inflation with any report that we do, and we can also adjust our unit costs. We can adjust our regional costs based on better information that's available, and we can adjust our deficiencies based on better information. I think you heard Director McComey speak yesterday about some of these more specific studies that need to be done. So as that information comes online and we have conversations during the facility planning sessions with the districts, we have the ability to vet through some of this information and make adjustments accordingly. And then also we've got the life expectancy, as I mentioned earlier, for all the assets and systems. This slide talks a little bit about that migration. The State Construction Department database is now called Operate. It was formerly the AIM database. Still the same company, still the same software. Everything looks very similar. Districts won't have any issue at all. I believe working with all this information, we plan on doing some training on it. Probably have some kind of recorded video that walks through it too, that's going to be available in the future, so anybody can go in and watch that at any given time. If they have a new employee that comes on, they'll be able to catch up pretty quick. But as of now, we've got all the data captured, uploaded into the SCD database. We've got the ability to replicate all the reports that you've seen and that you will see in today's demonstration. We've got ideas on our own reports that we want to run as well, and we're in the process of building those reports. Again, we have the ability to modify life expectancies, deficiencies, unit costs, and FCI scores, and we are going to make this integrate with the district's major maintenance work orders and capital construction projects. And that's something too that I would say is also applied when we're looking at, as I mentioned yesterday, component level projects. When we're talking about the index for deficiencies in relation to the available major maintenance balance, we're also considering any capital construction projects and major maintenance projects or component projects that are in process for that district. And that's also a consideration, along with the major maintenance balance the districts currently have and the projected major maintenance.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add in also on this particular slide, John mentioned that, we're still writing reports as we see necessary. And I mentioned yesterday that, I'd like to see the districts kind of start back up their facility managers group so we can get feedback from them. And one of the things that I think we have the ability to do is not necessarily for everybody's, every individual district and everybody's whim to write a script for them. But if there are scripts that in working with the districts as we all work through using this new system, there's something that they feel would be beneficial for the districts, we'd certainly like to work with them to write some scripts or something that would make life easier for the districts also.
Yeah, just an example, I think, of some of the things we'll be able to do, as a state. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about, the potential for combining some of these projects to gain some economy. If we wanted to, we could go in and we could write a script and we could pull out, what our expenditures for roof replacements are going to be for the next 10 years statewide. And we can project all the roofs that are anticipated to have an end of life within any given period of time. And that's just one example of what we can do. We can do that statewide. We can do it by district. We can do it by region. And I guess now we're at the point of the interactive demonstration. We ended up landing on an Albany 1 Vital Elementary School just simply because alphabetically, that's one that hit at the top of the list. So we figured we'd just keep it simple. It wasn't our intent to pick on anybody. And we've got JJ running this. This again is Bureau Veritas's software and database that we're getting into. And our intent, it may not look exactly like this in AIM, but all the information that you see is going to be available. This particular tab that he's got right now is just a general overview of that building. And it'll show you the immediate needs and some of the projected needs out. Shows you pictures. And it also breaks down the deficiencies by type. This is all the different assets and observations that were made on this particular building. Shows, sorry. This is all the pictures that we've got for that. Each picture has metadata attached to it that shows the exact time the pictures were taken. As you can see, there's multiple pages to go through. All of those pictures are tied back, like I said earlier, to specific components and assets. This is the FCI analysis that we were looking at. Stop right there for a minute, if you would, JJ. If you see there in the bottom right corner, that's where the inflation rate is. JJ, can you make an adjustment on that? Say pump it up to 4%. See how the chart adjusted in real time? And then the other thing that we have the ability to do on this is scroll down just a little bit farther, JJ. For the table view, as you see there, I'm having a little trouble seeing it, but I think we've got 3, 5, and 10 years there. We have the ability to adjust that table view and put in whatever years we would like to see. And you can see how that FCI grows and when we're projecting out for this one. And then again, it gives you the observation list by year of the deficiencies as they come online.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, when we look at that chart, for example, one of the things, so this year based on 23 and the 5-year look ahead, we had 21 Mercers that came out of that. Some of those were capacity, but some of them, the majority of them were based on conditions that we're currently doing. So now it's fiscal year 24 or year 24. And so what we're looking at now is we've gone in and used all this data, these charts, that's available. And so we're going to have another, I think it's 6 or 8 Mercers.
We're looking at about another 6 as per rule, we're looking 5 years in advance.
Yep.
So every year we're adding another year's worth of deficiencies in, which means we recalculate all the FCI scores. So the deficiencies will come online. Any remedies that were realized will also be taken off, and that FCI score will be adjusted accordingly.
Cool. It looks like it's going to be an awesome tool to help our state leadership understand the long-term trend line that for funding that's going to need to be available for sustaining this. I'm sure you guys have tried to do that in the past, but this is like help with that process.
I think it's a good tool too when we're doing our particular Mercers, because we might have, for instance, 2 schools that are, say, at a 0.30 that are flagging for a Mercer study. One of those schools, we might not see too much more in deficiencies for the next 10 years. After that, it might be a relatively new school, like, we spoke a little bit yesterday about Recluse, where it's a pretty new building, and it really doesn't, it's got some big ticket items like the roof that was taken care of with insurance that pop up. But once those are taken care of, really there isn't that much more to do on that building for a period of time. You may have another building where it's a 0.30 in 5 years, and within 10 years, it's a 0.55. I think that means we need to take a closer look at really whether or not there's a return on our investment for doing any kind of repairs or remedies within that school, other than what's necessary to prolong its life until a new replacement school can be built.
I need to ask a couple of questions. I know it's business kind of pushed me, but
Talk
On
really
this-
loud because it's being
on this
recorded.
program, will it doesn't have the ability to put preventive maintenance on it for our districts and daily work orders. Attending the legislative JAC, one of their questions is, okay, how do you know that they're doing PM? Everybody has to put work orders in for games. And so that would all be on one report. The other issue is when you get an exterior, a third party preventive maintenance or work order, you have to integrate it with our Ames now operates for our 680 reports. Otherwise, what happens is you have to reduplicate everything. So having it in one house would really help. Like the school dude is now been purchased by Brightly. And so we're going through the reports, and we told them, do not switch over all of our information until after the 680 report is, because we don't know if it'll integrate with our stuff. And, I can't imagine any school district has the manpower in the office, in the business office, or in our case, in our facility office, to do all of it twice. So being able to integrate it would really help out. And I know at one time, when Pops was here, he says, well, this can do everything that you guys need. If that's true, it would really be helpful to the districts. For one, for cost, because cost keeps going up. You have to keep signing 2 and 3 year contracts in order to get a break. But then they're offering less services that integrate with the state.
Let me ask for clarification. When you say preventative maintenance, are you talking about major maintenance or are you talking about routine maintenance?
Routine and regular preventive,
I'm gonna let JJ speak a little bit to that because he knows AIM better than I do. That might require an additional module in order to be able to do that, but I believe that it does have that capability. I think that what we're trying to do is take baby steps here
right.
and improve slowly to make sure that we get the buy-in that we need and the participation, because we didn't want to go a bridge too far with this and have it be so overwhelming for districts that it became obsolete. So right now, what we're focused on is the major maintenance, but I believe eventually we do have the ability to incorporate that type of stuff into this. It may not be as user-friendly as Brightly. I think that's something that we need to take a look at. And I'm suggesting that I don't know.
Right.
I'm not saying it's not, but I think that's something that we need to take a look at.
And compared to any facility maintenance program, AIM is difficult to navigate through unless you do it all the time. You put in major maintenance work orders and stuff. I mean, I've been doing it for 20 years, so I kind of get, I understand. But all of the, now the reason I'm bringing it up is because now school dude's making this changeover. Every district who has school dude, and I don't know how many there are out there, but I think it's a pretty fair amount. If they're having to make this changeover now and it's not working for them, now would be a good time to maybe investigate if we could.
I think it can be part of the discussion, and I certainly think we've established a good baseline to be able to do that with the identification of assets. I think there may be more lifting that needs to be done in order to do that, to identify the types of preventative maintenance and what the durations are between those tasks. But I believe it's something that we could eventually get to.
The program has the ability to do that. And we've actually done that with A&I,
That's
with the state. But it's pretty darn expensive. And JJ would have an idea as to bringing on 48 school districts into that versus some of the other programs. And it is, I don't know, as you mentioned, I don't know if it's as user friendly as the other programs that are perhaps out there. There are other state agencies that have tried to do it. And unless you have a dedicated person kind of working on it, they had a hard time utilizing it. Where A&I has the staff to kind of do that, they cover most of the buildings. But I know the prison system has had AIM for years, and they attempted a couple times, and then with turnover and stuff, it was just hard for them to stay up with it. But JJ, if you would address kind of the question.
And Jackie raised her hand too, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this has been fascinating. But unfortunately, as chairman of BWC College, I have to go hand out diplomas. So I won't be able to finish, but thank you guys so much. This looks like some really good work, and I hope we can help the schools understand this and use this to their advantage.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Dan 110%. And Dell and John, if you remember a couple of months ago about that light version of AIM that we were talking about, Facility Force, formerly Asset Works, has released a light version of this software that is designed to run routine and preventative maintenance in it, and really each school district would be and the cost of that is actually a lot lower than if you were to purchase the full suite of products. I don't know, Dell, if you remember us talking about that.
Yeah.
I would have to dig those costs and things back out, but essentially each separate school district would be a separate tenant in the system. Once the thing about that is everybody has to be doing it the same way. You've got to have the same set, of problem codes, the same set of, work codes and everything. And then once you build one tenant, you replicate that 47 more times And then everybody goes in and starts doing all of their, essentially it's all in the same SQL Server backend database, but when a school district logs in, they will only see their information.
So JJ, I'm assuming that now that would tie in at the end of the year with all our 680 reports. Then the legislators would actually have a record that they can pull randomly to see if districts who were making big dollar requests, to see if they're doing their preventive maintenance programs.
Yep.
And their work orders.
Yeah, everything, Dan. I mean, we could even set it up where essentially the 680 report would go away and any person at any point in time would know the real-time balance of their major maintenance because we're all in the same system.
All right, brother, you're the man.
So I'm going to let JJ kind of take over here a little bit because he's been building everything in Operate for the migration. So he knows this system a little bit better, and this is kind of his baby. So I'm going to let him walk through it and explain it.
So right here, this for the school district people out in the audience, this will look familiar. This is our the state construction department system, and all of that data out of the Bureau Veritas system has been migrated over to our system. John talked earlier about each individual asset out there. These are what the screens look like, and everybody, all users will have access to be able to get in and look at this information. But for the demo purpose, we can see right here, the walls associated with Vital Elementary School. In a lot of cases, there's multiple photos of different angles and things of the same asset, but you will see the photo in the thumbnail up in the top right. There's some details in here, what score, what FCA score was that asset given, the estimated install year. Really what's important in this center section, the base year, which was the year of the assessment, was 2023. This has got a deficiency and a renewal coming up in 2028. And then down here at the bottom, we've got the renewal cost associated with that. And this was calculated, the unit of measure was on square footage. But this renewal cost that we have right here, John talked a little bit about the regional and the location markup factors that Bureau Veritas built into their data. All of that data, asset by asset, is stored over in the extra description. There's a whole slew of extra data associated with this asset that is all included over here, but we can see that there was a regional cost markup of 120%, a global markup of 129%. The original unit cost was $53 a square foot. So just keep in mind that this renewal cost right here has those factors taken into account. This does not include any inflation, because what we're going to do in the reports is I'm going to give the user the ability to self-define their own inflation. So if they have 5 years, they may want to do 3% in the first 3 and 5% on the last 2. The user will be able to find that, and the report will recalculate those totals so it's forward-looking. Any notes? So in the notes log of each asset, it's got the assessor, the name, and the email address of the Bureau Veritas assessor, and any notes that they made on that individual asset is stored in the notes log. If there are additional photos down in the related documents section, you will see a link right here that will take you out to a cloud drive that has any additional photos. If they did happen to take additional photos. And the way that all of these photos can be downloaded, I extracted all of the metadata out of each photo. And the name of the photo includes the month, day, year, hour, minute, and second that picture was taken. So you'll know exactly when that picture was taken. But all these individual, like Dell said, we're currently working on speccing out reports, and we're going to be writing reports that will eventually go live on everybody's work desk, and they can go in and filter down to their data. And you know, any additional you know, things that the school district would want to see, I welcome that input so we can make it something useful for everyone.
Any questions from anybody?
looks good.
Yeah, John, I have one question. I was just trying to think the best way to phrase it here, but if we're looking at an asset, is there a way that links those assets together? Like, I guess when I see an exterior brick wall that's failing, it's usually failing because the roof is leaking, or there's a roof drain pipe that's causing problems, or a foundation that's causing a problem. Is there ways that link the assets together as we're evaluating when there's a deficiency? Like, usually the wall doesn't usually just fail unless there's something else causing a problem.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Parents, we have the ability to go out and look at the other assets, not necessarily link them together. That might tell some of the story, but I don't really think anything is going to replace the benefit of some kind of professional observation or opinion, maybe, to go out and take a look. I'm not sure that we could make a determination that, you know, there was an issue with an adjacent component that was causing some of that damage simply from the information that we have. I think for everybody involved, it's important to keep in mind that these guys went out and did 630 buildings. JJ, what was it, around 30 million square feet?
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah.
In a pretty short, relatively speaking, period of time. So I think we've established a good baseline. I think when we know that there's issues that are there, as we're bringing in professionals specific to that particular component, we'll be gathering more information, and that information we want to capture and get into the system as well. And so I think it's just going to continue to grow and get better and get more detailed as time goes by. But I still don't think we're quite at the point where we can make a diagnosis based on the information that we have. I think what it's intended to be is more of a flag that this particular component or system needs a closer look from somebody who's an expert in that area.
No, that makes sense. Again, I see in my experience a lot of times, like when there's, for example, water damage or effervescence, you know, building up on a brick wall, some building owners don't realize that's because of a problem somewhere else. It's not the brick is not failing. It's because you're getting water where it's not supposed to be. You either have a roof leak or a pipe that's leaking or something like that. So,
Commissioner, to your point, some of these remedies might not necessarily be the cure. They may just be, you know, a treatment to the symptom.
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
JJ, do you have anything else you want to add out of operate?
I don't. Thank you.
Chairman, we're open for any discussion, anything in particular you would like to take a look at, or any questions that you might have.
Do any of the commissioners have any more questions or anything they'd like to answer?
Looks like good work to me.
Good. Thank you, Bruce. No, sir.
Did I make one comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I am impressed by some of the information that we were able to extrapolate there to put in there as far as even going down to the level of the person who did the evaluation and their email address and some of that. So I think some of the discussion we've had the last year or so on the evaluation, the FCI and stuff like that, especially given the metadata that's out there, it was probably a cart in front of the horse kind of thing, where it's just the department catching up with the information they had and being able to work through it has been a valuable. It looked like it's going to be a great tool.
And my hope is over the next probably 6 months time frame, where the districts then have access to be able to look at this, utilize it, play with it, and then at the same time come in and have our annual reports, and they can come back and say, you know, we've looked at this data. You know, there's been some concerns from the districts. This doesn't match up, or even to the degree what they have, that's not even the right building. That got transposed. By them going through and looking at those various items, and we can address those in those annual meetings. And again, that's one of the reasons that I want to start the annual meeting up. And even though it wasn't scheduled this year, to move that forward and try to tie that all together. And I think over time, it is a new system, and the more we use it, the better we'll get at it. And to be able to use it, as JJ said, and Dan, I didn't know that they were changing out your system that many of the districts use. It might be advantageous for the state to look at that and try and tie that in at the same time. I know it's a heavy lift for the districts to do the 680 reports and get them in. You know, we have timing for that to happen by certain dates, and certainly in the years that I was director in the past, and I've heard since coming back, same thing. Not all the districts meet those timetables. Some of that comes in late versus it's real time. So if it is user friendly to be able to do that, you know, maybe that's something that we can start working on with the districts as a work group to take a look at it anyway. So.
No other questions? Thank you, John. Thank you, Dr. McComb. And I think the nice thing is your willingness that if there's problems, you'll fix them. And I think that all the districts should have a comfort level with that. You know, marching in a positive manner at all times. I think districts need that. Be as positive as you are about it. And if they help their play, you'll end up with a good product.
Mr. Chairman, this shift in, I want to say methodology, but I think it's probably a little different than that, because now we're looking into the future and projecting deficiencies as they come online. Is fairly new to us as well. And so I don't believe that the districts in the preliminary reports that they saw necessarily were aware of all the different information and data and how that could be used to their benefit. I wish that this could have been rolled out a little faster, but because it was something new to us, we spent quite a bit of time vetting through all the data and the information, and also had to put a substantial amount of effort into preparing the AIM database, preparing the crosswalk, determining what the uniformat codes were going to be and what level we were going to look at that. So all of that has taken a lot of work, and it's taken a little longer than I think we originally anticipated. So I would just like to say that I really appreciate the patience that the districts have displayed and the cooperation that we got from them during the course of this assessment. I think that it's going to be well worth the wait, but everything that we've done, you know, wasn't done I guess maybe the intent wasn't that there be a lack of transparency. Quite the opposite. We wanted to be fully transparent. And that's why we dropped some of the information early, in order to show people what was out there. So we do appreciate the commission's willingness to work forward through this and the district's participation. And we believe we've got a good baseline that's only going to be improved on from here on.
Well, I think with some of the numbers, the projects that are needed, the first time you hand a report to the legislature, they're gonna have an oh my gosh moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the dollars are gonna be huge. Yep. Okay, are there any other comments? Okay, any other items for our business meeting today? If not, I'm officially closing the meeting at 9:38 a.m.